Hey, what's going on? This is Muriel from the Sunshine Family. Today talking about renting a house in Costa Rica, the pros and the cons. Now, if you wonder, who are you and why should I listen to you? Well, I moved to Costa Rica in 2018 with my husband and two growing up kids, and we have rented houses and we have bought houses. So basically I know the downsides and the positive sides of both. And I am here on the channel to share everything I have learned so far about living in Costa Rica in general. And I get a lot of questions about this topic, about renting a house in Costa Rica, but also about buying a house in Costa Rica. So this video is specifically touching on renting a house in Costa Rica, and I'm going to share the answers to most frequently asked questions. So stick with me. Before I'm gonna do that, I wanted to first invite you, if you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, you can consider to do so by tapping that little square icon that you see here at the bottom of the screen. Tap it, hit the bell icon to get a notification every time I upload a new video, and that might help you find the information you're searching for. If you're interested in Costa Rica living, Costa Rica to travel, Costa Rica in general, and if you're open to learn from all the mistakes that I have made, but also all the things that I found out that has been incredibly well working. So with that being said, let's dive right in. Renting a house in Costa Rica, let me first touch on the pros, okay? What's the pros of renting over buying, right? Perhaps you want to write this down, get a pen and paper, or just rewatch this video. Oh, and by the way, if you think that I deserve a thumb up, give me your thumb up and share this video if you know others who can benefit from this video. So first pro of renting a house in Costa Rica is that it allows you to test drive a specific area in Costa Rica or a specific neighborhood if you already know which area you would want to stay for a while or even live for a while or long term, right? I leave that up to you. So here is the thing, Costa Rica has many different type of areas. You can live in the Central Valley, that's a little bit further away from the ocean. You can live on a peninsula where I live, that's more or less more remote. You can live in the capital area around San Jose, Santa Ana, for example, and you can live basically in the mountains. And there are so many types of areas, and they all have a specific atmosphere. They all have benefits and pros and cons on its own. Now, I am assured that when you're looking into moving to Costa Rica, for example, the same that I did with my husband and two growing up kids, also if you don't have kids, by the way, it's always better to test drive. How does an area feel? No matter if you have vacationed somewhere and you thought, oh, this is so awesome, I'm dreaming about living here. Don't decide to buy right away, specifically not from a distance when you're not in Costa Rica, but start feeling how it feels to actually live there. And you will discover that it's really different to live during basically during the whole year round. It's a big difference between vacationing and living somewhere. It's super different if you came here in dry season and you're now living here in rainy season. The land acts differently. You can have mud flows over the property. You can have, I don't know, your road can be inaccessible. There can be so many things different when you're here for a longer term. So test drive a specific area and or neighborhood. You can have an awesome house, or you have found an awesome location, but it could be a very, very noisy neighborhood that you can only discover once you live there, right? So I'm just saying, test drive it and feel how it feels. And it can be a big, big pro of doing it that way. And then you can always consider to buy, right? And then take it from there. You can make connections about buying. So really test driving is important. I've done it myself. The pro number 2 about renting a house over buying a house is that you don't have any responsibility about maintenance. Now, what is maintenance? If you're owning a house, like I know everything about it. I own a house on a big property, 5.5 acres. I built a house there and there was an existing house there, so I know really all ins and outs. There's lots of maintenance. Just as an example, water pipes can break. If a water pipe breaks and you don't fix it, you're gonna pay extremely high amounts of water bills. You don't want it. I've had it happen in my house, so I know how it feels to carry away money like that. The jungle will always want to take over, right? So you have to maintain the nature. You have to cut the grass. You have to cut away trees. If you have your own property, if you rent a house, the house owner is responsible for all of that. So you basically pay your rent in exchange for that someone else is doing that for you. So I think that is a big win. Just to mention other maintenance examples, if you really think, well, what maintenance can you have about renting a house or buying a house, having a house? If you have a water well and the well is dry, you have to check what's happening in the well. The paint will fall off. If you live in a very humid area like Santa Teresa on peninsulas that's surrounded by oceans, there's a lot of water in the air. It's in the walls of a house, and you have to paint your house faster than expected. And if you're renting, you don't have that responsibility. It's easy, right? Also, don't forget about the road. If you own a house and a property that has a shared road, which is not a public road, in rainy season, often bad roads flood away, and you have to fix the road yourself, and you have to cover that and have to pay for that yourself, and you have to work together with your neighbors, and that's not always easy. So the maintenance of the road leading to your house, otherwise if you cannot reach your house, you cannot live there. So don't forget that it's a lot of work to maintain your own house and everything that's surrounded with it. Renting is a big benefit. Pro number 3, the freedom to leave without basically organizing a house sitter is a big pro. For example, if you own a house, you cannot just simply leave based on the examples that I gave you in pro number 2, right? There can be a lot of maintenance, things can break, but also, you cannot just leave your property. There will be the risk of robberies, people entering your property and taking away stuff. It happens, especially when you live kind of by yourself on a property that's not directly surrounded by neighbors. It's always a risk to leave a house just like that. So if you're renting and you don't know how long you want to stay there, of course, based on the contract that you signed, or if you have a contract that you signed with the renter, with the house owner, you can basically leave whenever you please. So you can say 1 month in advance. That's in general the most reasonable contract. 30 days before you leave, you're gonna say it, and then I say, well, I'm gonna leave the first of the next month in 30 days, and then the house owner has time enough to find another renter, and you can just go, right? And you just still commit to your obligation to pay rent 1 more month. I think it's a big benefit having that freedom, because it happens a lot that once you live somewhere, you actually discover or another cool area that is more interesting for you, or that the area is not that perfect as you expected. So that's a big benefit of renting. Pro number 4 of renting a house in Costa Rica is that you can pay cash for rent and even for bills if the house owner says, well, this is the numbers of the electricity bill, the electricity meter, the water meter, and the internet connection. You can go to any supermarket or the bank and pay in efectivo, means paying cash, meaning you don't have to have a bank account in Costa Rica, which can be a hustle depending on how much money you want to be able to have access to, have floating around. In general, everyone can open up a bank account up to $1,000. But if you, for example, are renting and paying rent that's more than $1,000 per month, you have a problem by paying that by paying that per bank account. But it's also when you have a mortgage, right? Mortgages, you cannot in general pay cash, right? That goes per bank account. So renting is always handy, because most landowners or house owners are often open to receive it cash, but you can also make a deposito at the bank if the house owner, your boss of the house, accept often a deposito through the bank. So you can pay it at the bank or in the supermarket, but it goes to the bank account of the owner of the house. So you don't need a bank account. And when you own a property, it's inevitable that you need a Costa Rica bank account to pay for specific things like taxes and stuff for the municipality, for example. So it's really easier to rent. Pro number 5, the price of the rent is always negotiable. Trust my word on this, it's the truth. It depends on the season that you're renting. So if you come in high season, of course, your position is lower in negotiating, right? So I came here in Costa Rica, for example, in low season, in October, in the end of September. It's low season, a lot of long-term renters leave because they don't like the rainy season. In the area where I lived, Santa Teresa, and the other side of Costa Rica, it's a different time of the year, rainy season, so don't pin me on that. But yeah, if you come in high season, you often have to accept the higher rates of rent. But if you come in low season, it's really negotiable. I really want to give this tip. Don't rent long-term from a distance. Always be careful with signing a contract for long-term, because you never know how a house and renting a house happens to be for real once you are there. So this is how I've done it. I rented an Airbnb for a couple of days, and then I start to search from there. If you can find a long-term rent, try to rent it for a month, and without having seen it, haven't been there, haven't been able to test the real speed of the internet, for example, haven't tested the real peace and quiet around the house, or is it really noisy? You can only discover it once you're there. So do your best to stay away from long-term signed contracts without having rented it for a short term. And that is negotiable too. Be careful with paying a lot of deposito in advance. So be careful with that. But overall, the price of the rent is negotiable, of course, depending on which season you're coming and if you're planning to rent long-term or short-term. And then be careful for the things that I just shared. Paying high depositos and signing for a really extreme long period. Please go there first and test drive the house for a month. Ask if that is possible, right? Remember this, a house owner is also, it's also beneficial for him or her having a great rentee, right? So yeah, if you are an awesome person who is loyal and always pays on time, they want you there. So don't be insecure about it, and know your marketing position in negotiating, okay? And then the 6th pro, which is really a big one, especially if you're looking to move to Costa Rica, and is that you can come here without anything and you're able to rent it furnished. So you don't have to bring furniture, you just have your stuff that's needed, and then you can take it from there. If you're looking to buy a house, then you can always buy stuff that you need here in Costa Rica, but you can start clean with just 2 suitcases and a backpack. That's what we have done, and you don't need to bring any furniture. It's often in place of nice rental houses. Before I forget, before I'm gonna continue to go to the cons of renting a house in Costa Rica, consider to check out the description below my video if you're curious what it is that I do to make a really well living by working online in Costa Rica. Meaning not having a brick and mortar business, not having a job, not relying on my being retired, on a retirement check that might be a little bit low. No, I earn my living purely online without chasing friends and family, because I live super remote. check it out in the description below. There's a couple of links. I share there information about affiliate marketing, about my own products and services. I wrote a book, 7 Steps to Move to Costa Rica, by the way. You find information about that there, and also how to connect with me on Facebook Messenger. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you, because I love to learn more about you as well. Now, are you ready for some very important cons of renting over buying? Here you go. Con number 1 is that with paying rent, you're carrying away a monthly amount, and you're not going to receive anything back in return besides the joy of living somewhere. So basically, it is not a long-term investment. You're paying it and then it's gone. You got like a month of hopefully pleasure of living somewhere, which is not always the case. So if you're looking for a long-term investment, I assure you that buying is better. But if you want to have more freedom, then renting is better. Con number 2, a very, very important one, is that, and it happens a lot, and that's why I also make videos about these topics, is that a lot of people get ripped off because they start a renting contract from a distance. For example, they're looking to come to Costa Rica. They want to live there for a specific amount of time. It could be short term, it could be long term, and they want more or less like security. And they start Googling and they find websites, or they find community groups, and they start making arrangements for their rental house without they have set any foot or toe in that house, meaning it's easy to be ripped off. On what points can you be ripped off, you might be wondering? Well, you can be ripped off about the pictures can look awesome, but once you're there, other houses are built wall to the house that you're renting, and basically you have no privacy, and there's lots of noise, right? Another thing that can happen is that the house owner is terrible, and he's not sticking to his commitment to do the maintenance, right? I once had a leaking roof and no one came. I had to arrange everything myself, and I thought that was part of the deal. I'm renting, so I don't have that responsibility. Actually, I got that responsibility, and I was like, that's really weird, because I pay $1,000 per month for a crappy house. So a lot of people get ripped off. Most of the time of that, the expectation of the house for real is not compared to what it was seeing it on pictures, right? And people pay way, way, way too much for what a house is worth. Now you might be wondering, what is a house worth, Muriel? Where is the measurement? How can I measure if I pay the best rent for this type of house? Well, it really depends on where you are, but overall it should be, well, it depends on if there's a pool, yes or no. So that should be a different video, but it really depends, because there's so much details to share about that. If there's a pool, yes or no. If there's airco, yes or no. How much space you have for yourself, yes or no. Mountain view, close to the ocean, yes or no. How many bedrooms? Bedroom is a big thing that can crank up the rent per month, yes or no. How many bathrooms are there, etc. If you pay including bills or excluded bills such as Wi-Fi, water, electricity, like that, all factors is what makes a rent a specific amount. So be careful, don't get ripped off. My advice, just rent something on Airbnb for a specific amount of time, a specific amount of weeks perfectly, and then take it from there. Start searching around and give yourself the ability to visit the house first before you commit to it, especially for long term. So don't be ripped off. That's a big con. You want to prevent it. So con number 3 of renting a house over buying a house is that you always will be depending on another person. I've heard many stories that someone was renting a house for a long time, and then the owner decided to double the price because he just needed more money, and the renter didn't have a proper contract, so he had no choice or to pay the new price or to just find something else. And then he had to move in with his mom in a 1-bedroom apartment, which was of course not ideal. So you're always depending on someone else, right? Sometimes that can be awesome, but in most cases it will not be in your benefit, because if rules change, if the rent change, if an owner decides to build another house on the same property and you have a contract, for example, and now you're in the construction noise, just remember, be aware of how that can influence your joy of living. So don't trust too much blindly on a stranger, even if you have a contract. If there's not written down that there will be no new construction, you're kind of good to go, but then how valid is a contract anyways? I am not sure about that. You should have a rentee contract looked at by an attorney. By the way, I can refer to my attorney if you would like to, but I would just take it easy with renting and be aware of that it's a kind of renting. You're always depending on what the house owner will decide, right? So, but there's more cons. Actually, I'm not done yet. Con number 4 is that you cannot apply for a residency based on being an investor. Now, let me explain that. If you buy a property for $200,000 or more, right, you can apply for residency, because that's the limit of, that's the budget that Costa Rica accepts that you can use to apply for residency, which prevents that you have to leave the country every 90 days, called border run / visa run. And I have done that for several years, and it's doable, but I'm not gonna say it's ideal, because after a couple of border runs, you're kind of done with losing a day or two to get back and forth out of the country, inside of the country. And right now in COVID time and restrictions time and COVID tests and requirements of health insurance, it's a hustle. It's really a hustle. So I believe that renting is a con, because you're missing out of the opportunity to apply for residency based on the rule being an investor. Of course, you can apply for residency also when you can prove that you have that you are retired, you're a rentista, that you need to show that you have at least $2,000 per month for the rest of your life placed in a bank account, or there are some other rules. But for me, having residency is thanks to that I own a property. And if I would have decided to keep on renting, I could never have applied for residency. So, but there's another con, and that is you miss out. If you're renting, you are not legally allowed to make an income on a rental house, as long as you have not got an approval of your house owner, of course, of the house owner. So I'm just saying, the con of renting is missing out on an income stream in Costa Rica, because renting is still a very solid income stream for many people who own property in Costa Rica. They just do it at the side of their retirement. They just have a property with 2 houses, one they live in, one they rent out, and that pays for their life in Costa Rica, for example. And you cannot do that as a rentee. So owning land and owning a house is a big opportunity. So be aware of that, especially if you don't know what type of income you could have in Costa Rica. By the way, I don't earn my living renting out my property. I earn my living online. So you can do that anyways. And if you're curious about what it is that I do online, go ahead to the description below and learn what it is that I do, right? To earn a living online. It doesn't have to be complicated. And especially with all the good internet connections whole Costa Rica has now, it is super possible. Check it out. But again, you can earn a living by renting out, but not as a rentee yourself. You have to own property. So that may be a reason for you to consider to buy property. Stay tuned for my next video, because that is the topic of my next video. Buying property or buying a house in Costa Rica, pros and cons. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing in my next video, but then about buying. So you can compare right? Because it always deserves to compare. It always pays off well to compare. Don't make overnight decisions, right? Make decisions based on long term. And I hope that you can benefit from my video today. So thank you so much for watching until the end. I know it was a long video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that yet by tapping that little icon there, and check out the description below for more information, free book tips, free training about what it is that I do. And first and foremost, I'm looking forward to meeting you one day in Costa Rica. This was Muriel from the Sunshine Family.